Hello. Um, I am back. It's been a while again since I've done a show. So I see that somebody's watching. Can you please let me know if you can hear me before I go into my spiel? I'll wait until I know that I'm being heard. Thank you. Okay, so I am live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter right now. My name is Catherine Vitale. If you've watched the show Common Ground before, you know that I usually talk about any and all issues, social issues, political issues, and try to build a bridge between the left and right political spectrum. And that's the reason I started the show Common Ground. I was doing it 3 times a week, and then I lost my co-host because she was offended or some shit. I don't fucking know. But I've been really, really busy getting myself and my friend Shawn Nelson on the ballot for Boston City Council at large. And we both needed to get 1,500 certified signatures to qualify to be on the ballot in the November election. And we both got our signatures. We're officially on the ballot. And it's been a busy past month and a half. So I apologize that I started this show 2 months ago, did it for a few weeks, and then abruptly just stopped coming on because I was just exhausted from being out collecting signatures all day. So I'll try to be more consistent with the show 3 nights a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 p.m. Or maybe I'll try to at least commit to 1 night a week. I don't really know yet. But that's the Common Ground show. Maybe I'll come on tomorrow and talk about a few of the issues. I'm not sure yet, but I'll post on Facebook if I'm going to. Tonight, I wanted to come on to talk about the candidate forum that Shawn and I just participated in. It was our first one. I don't know. I can't speak for Shawn, but I was super fucking nervous because there are 4 seats up for election this year on the Boston City Council for the at-large seats that represent the entire city. And all 4 of them have sitting city councilors that are running for re-election. So we are up against 4 incumbents and 2 other brand new candidates. So there are 8 candidates altogether, 4 incumbents, and 4 people who I'm pretty sure none of us have ever run for any office before, all 4 of the other candidates. So I would like to see a whole brand new Boston City Council. Personally, I think that anybody who's been in office over the past 3 years anywhere probably has to go for allowing the things to happen that have happened over the past 3 years. So, there are some people that some people that hold offices that I may like or agree with or, appreciate some work that they've done, but I don't think that any single politician has done enough over the past 3 years. So that's what I have to say about that. And the 4 brand new people that are in this race, me and Shawn are 2 of them. Obviously, those are my 2 picks, and really, who cares about anybody else? That's how it has to be, pretty much is how I'm concerned, except for I would just like to say, if there's anybody that actually is a Boston voter that's watching this, if you're unhappy with the Wu administration, I would not use one of your 4 votes for Henry Santana. He is Wu's candidate, and that's probably all I need to say about that. I'm not going to go into a big thing about that, but I was the 5th person on the ballot. So I was the first non-incumbent to get on the ballot with my 1,500 signatures. And then the other 3 candidates joined me by the deadline. So there's 8 of us on there. The election's in November. We had our first candidate forum tonight with a group or organization called JP Progressives, which, if you're not from Boston or not familiar with the area, JP is Jamaica Plain, which is a neighborhood in Boston. And I know that on my Facebook, maybe even on my YouTube, I have like majority conservative type people that follow me. So you're probably thinking, why the fuck would you go on a forum with a progressive group? I plan on participating in as many things as I can that I get invited to. Because how else would I be heard by people who wouldn't typically be following me, right? Maybe there's people that won't agree with me on some issues, but maybe they will agree with me on some issues, and that might overpower their disagreements with me. Who knows? I'm not, striving to be loved by everyone. I'm striving to be heard, to get messages out, and to empower other people to do the same. So, regardless of how much hate or, beating up we take with, people in comments of these videos or whatever, I'm fine. I'm all for it. I love free speech. So, I am going to try to play the recorded video of the candidate forum right now, and then I'll probably chime in here or there if I feel like something needs to be elaborated, because they did only give us 1 minute per question and they had a lot of fucking questions. So I'm going to play it. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you're watching the replay on any platform, please comment, like, share the video. If you're not watching on YouTube, please go to the YouTube channel. It's People's Press Media, and subscribe and turn on the notification button so that you get notifications when we go live, because just like tonight, the live streams could be spontaneous, and we basically use this channel only for live streams. So, comment on the video, share the video, let me know what you think. Whether it's good or bad, please let me know what you think. I want to know what people think. So I'm going to try to play the video, and I am like technology illiterate, so please excuse me if it takes me a minute to figure this out here. Uh-oh. Of course. It's going to take me a minute to figure this out here. Okay. I think I may have figured it out. Wait a minute. Please hold. This is really tricky. Hold on. I think I got it. Whoa. Okay, I'm going to show this and play the audio for a minute, and then I'm going to come back to where I can see myself, and you got to let me know if you can see it and hear the audio.
4 at large, as well as 1 district city councilor.
Can you see it when I put it up, and can you hear it? Did you hear anything? Okay, you could see it and you could hear it. Great. So let's go.
Because we are partnering with 501c3 organizations, Boston chapter of the NAACP, Mass Voter Table, all candidates were extended an invitation to participate. Unfortunately, several candidates decided not to attend tonight's meeting. Michael Flaherty, who attended this meeting in 2021, and Erin Flynn, who also attended the forum in 2021. Tonight with us, we have Cliff Braithwaite, Ruthzy Louis Jean, sorry about that, Julio Mejia, Shawn Nelson, Henry Santana, and Catherine Vitale. Before we introduce our partners, we'll say a few words. I want to share a few announcements and tell you a little bit about JP Progressives. Jamaica Plain Progressives is an all-volunteer organization established in 2009. JPP has been working to build a progressive voice in our community and organize for change in Boston, Massachusetts, and nationwide. We conduct candidate forums and organize to support progressive candidates at all levels of government. We hold educational forums and advocate for progressive change in our state on issues such as criminal justice reform, affordable housing, equitable education funding, safe communities for immigrants, progressive revenue, and transparency in government. We are extremely excited to announce the resumption of JPP activist afternoons on Sundays from 3:30 to 5. Every other week, we'll be making phone calls to voters in districts of representatives on the state legislators' housing committee and leadership to get them to support various bills. On June 24th, we'll be calling them regarding the transfer fee bills. We'll gather on Zoom and in person at a member's house in JP, where you can join a community and for 30 minutes or an hour, or even, not if the full 90 minutes, every phone call counts. And we welcome you to join us in this volunteer action. This year we have.
I'm so sorry, but in the Spanish translation, we have two of both Spanish speakers, both translators are translating at the same time. Can we get that addressed so our Spanish speakers can understand everything properly? Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know.
I will try to figure that. Marcelo, did you, I think we have two, can you hear me? Okay. Okay, great. I'm not able to figure out how to record in here. Is there, actually, I think maybe I can just do it here. Okay, let me just see if I can do it. No, I can't. It doesn't look like I can do it because okay, I'll try to figure out another solution. Okay, thanks, sorry.
Did he respond to you, Ziba? Can I go on?
Yeah, we're all set. Thank
you. All right. I feel like I'm going on and on. I apologize, people. Have to listen to my allergy-ridden voice here. Okay, so this year, we have hosted 2 forums on housing, one at the city and one at the state level. At the very local level, Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Council has the power to control housing in JP. The JPNC's Housing and Development Committees advocate for affordable housing by monitoring the development and preservation of housing stock by public participation, including issues such as the dispossession of public land and developer plans. The Zoning Committee reviews and makes recommendations on appeals to the city concerning conditional use permits, changes of occupancy, and most importantly, variances on the city's zoning code. Sorry about that, zoning code. That is why, for the first time, JPP will be supporting candidates running to be on the JPNC. We will be sending out a slate of candidates that we believe best represent our housing values. The election will take place on June 24th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at 3 polling locations: Forest Hills Tea Station, Stop and Shop, and JP Licks. Please vote. This is critical. Affecting housing policy starts with these hyper-local councils. Finally, we want to thank you all, for anyone who showed up in solidarity with First Baptist Church following the vandalization of their property with anti-LGBTQ plus graffiti last week. Some of you marched with First Baptist at the Pride Parade. Others attended Sunday's celebration and standout, which was a beautiful event. This is a time of rising threat and intimidation in Massachusetts from marginalized communities, especially the trans community. And it is important for us to continue to show our love, support, and solidarity. Now I'd like to introduce our partners. First, I want to introduce Anthony Crossan from NAACP. We've partnered with them regularly since 2018, and we're excited for the Boston chapter, who will be hosting the national convention here in Boston in late July. Anthony?
Yes, good evening, and good evening, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for that introduction. As mentioned, my name is Anthony Crossan, first Vice President of the NAACP Boston branch, and on behalf of our branch, our President, Tanisha Sullivan, our Executive Committee, and a very large group of very committed volunteers, we welcome you to this forum tonight. I'd also like to thank JP Progressives for hosting this forum and others like it. To our moderators and those that will facilitate tonight, thank you for helping us learn more about the candidates, as well as where they stand on some of the most important issues. And to those joining, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your commitment to vote. When polls open, there is never an election more important than the one that we're in. Lydia Obasi said, "My vote is my voice, and the voice of all who struggle so that I may have a voice." And I think that really resounds here tonight. We understand what's going on and where we live. And just a little while ago, we talked about some things there. So I just want to thank everyone for joining tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening intently. Thank you for taking notes if you do. And thank you for reaching out to the polls, and would encourage you to get involved with the NAACP Boston branch if you are not, to consider a membership and that sort of thing. Either way, thank you. And Annie, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Anthony. Next up, I want to introduce Vanessa Snow, who wears many hats, a prolific activist and JP native who grew up organizing as a youth activist with Hyde Square Task Force. She is representing Mass Vote, Mahente, and Right to the City Vote. She will also serve as the co-moderator tonight alongside Yawo Miller, our favorite Boston journalist. Vanessa?
Good evening. Thank you to the candidates, and thank you to the JP Progressives and all the partnering organizations for allowing us to collaborate in putting this event together. I'd just like to emphasize that Mass Vote, Mass Voter Table, NAACP, Chinese Progressive Association are all nonpartisan. Are all nonpartisan civic engagement organizations So our role in putting this event together is first and foremost for educational purposes. And so we love partnering with the endorsing organizations that put this together, as we feel like there is alignment between the issues among all of our issues that are reflected in the interview questions today. And so while there is JP progressives and right to the city vote on this call, we are not using this forum for endorsement purposes.
Thank you, Vanessa. And finally, I'd like to introduce Winnie Zhang from Chinese Progressive Association Political Action. CPPA takes a citywide approach to organizing and shows up regularly to help elect progressive candidates in JP, including Kendra Laura and others. Winnie?
Thanks, Annie. Hi, everyone. My name is Winnie Zhang. I'm the program director at Chinese Progressive Political Action, and we want to thank JP Progressives for hosting this forum, as well as all the co-sponsors and our translators as well. So Chinese Progressive Political Action is a political organization dedicated to building the collective political power of the greater Boston Chinese community to bring full equality to our communities. So for over a decade, CPPA has been fighting for fully bilingual ballots, affordable housing, good jobs, and strong and stable communities. We currently engage voters across Boston, as well as just outside of Boston. Our members are predominantly Chinese immigrants from working families or low-income elderly, and they include home care workers, rideshare drivers, and restaurant workers. Since 2011, we've trained and developed our members to be leaders in their communities, mobilizing to win concrete changes that will improve their lives and build solidarity with communities of color. We organize on issues that are important to our members, like housing affordability, investment in public transit, and voting rights. So we're happy to be here, and we're looking forward to hearing from the city council candidates tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And tonight we want to ask the candidates and audiences to be respectful to each other and to the moderators, and that includes when posting in chat. Please do not engage in harassing, discriminatory, and intimidating behavior that stifles debate and constructive dialogue. We reserve the right to mute candidates and disable chat if necessary. And now I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa for the forum rules.
All right. So the forum rules. Each candidate will have 1 minute to introduce themselves and 1 minute closing statements. Moderators will pose questions and candidates will each have 1 minute to respond. Candidates will be given 30 seconds to rebut if mentioned explicitly by name or at the moderator's discretion. We will have at least 10 questions with 1 minute responses from each candidate. We will also have several rapid fire questions where we will ask to provide yes or no responses. We will rotate responses based on alphabetical order. And if we have time, we will open up for audience questions. But before we start the questions, we want to make sure that the candidates know how to use the yes or no reactions. So for yes, we're going to be using this green check mark. And if you need to practice, you click on reactions. And then for no, it will be an X. And we hope that everyone will be able to answer them all at the same time so we can take a quick count. We won't be asking for additional comments. These are yes or no questions. And so we're going to start now with inviting our candidates to make opening statements. You have 5 minutes each. 1 minute each. Sorry. And so we're going to start in alphabetical order. So the first is going to be Cliff Braithwaite.
Can I just pause just to make sure that everybody can see the timer?
Can any candidate not see the timer?
Actually, now I need to, oh, there it is. Can folks see the timer? Yeah, everybody can see it? Yes? Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, we're ready.
All right, so we'll start, again, as Vanessa noted, we're going in alphabetical order. We're going to start first with Clifton. Okay, so while Clifton's working on the sound, why don't we move to next to Ruth Z, and we'll come back to you, Clifton.
Yeah. So I think that they're not able to unmute themselves.
I'm gonna make, I got it, that's true. I'm gonna make you co-host. I'm sorry. Hang on one sec.
Okay, candidates, forgive us for our technical issues.
Okay, I'm making you a co-host, so you should be able to, and then I will add, hold on, let me just do this real quick. Clifton, co-host.
Test. Checking. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
So go ahead.
All right. Yeah,
All
go
set?
ahead.
All right. Thank you. I don't see the timer up, so I'm going to jump right into it. First of all, I'd like to thank the JP Progressive and their whole staff. The work that they've been doing in the community for decades is tremendous. Also, I'd like to thank the moderators, as well as the NAACP, Mass Vote, and all the organizations who have donated their time to make this happen today. My name is Clifton A. Braithwaite. I'm a longtime resident of Boston, Mass, but I came by the way of Newton. I was a resident of Newton and moved into Boston at the age of 8. Living in Roxbury before moving into Hyde Park, it was a tremendous childhood. And my commitment to my community is what it is. I've been working decades in this community, working with various different organizations, as well as different candidates. I believe focusing on voting and getting the people in the community activated is very important to me. Some of the things that I stand on, I'll get into it later on, but I'd like to say to the residents of JP was actually the first place that I started door knocking to get signatures, and I appreciate the support there.
You're past 1 minute, sir.
Okay.
So we're going to move on to Ruth Z.
All right, and I wanted to thank the Boston City Council at-large candidates and the other candidates for their support. It was a great effort, what we did, working together collectively. That's what Boston City Council should be about, us working together and making moves together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Z.
Hi, everyone. Buenas noches a todos. Bonsoir tout le monde. I'm Ruth Louisiane, at-large city councilor, First Haitian American on the Boston City Council. If you hear that, that's a train running in the background. I love train tracks run right in my backyard, care deeply about transit-oriented housing. I'm a BPS kid, grew up here, daughter of Haitian immigrants. This is my first term on the Boston City Council, where I've been fighting for affordable housing via the Acquisition Opportunity Program, funding the first trans emergency house here in Dorchester, working on the arrival of new migrants who are come here in such a shelter, fleeing persecution. So I've been doing a lot of work in that space, from everything from legalizing beekeeping and making sure that we are showing up for our students in Boston Public Schools, making sure that we have the social workers for our students with limited and interrupted education, doing the work every day, small things like trash cans to big things like climate justice. I'm so excited that I get to represent this entire city on the Boston City Council. And thank you to all the groups, JPP, the Boston chapter of the NAACP, Max Vote, Mi Gente, Right to the City Vote. I hope to earn the endorsement of the endorsing entities tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Next, we'll hear from Julia Mejia.
Good evening, everyone. Super excited to be here with you all. Thank you to the host for creating space to show up and really explain what we have been doing since I've been on the office. This is my second term, and I can't believe that this is my third year running, and I still get nervous in these spaces. But in a nutshell, I've been in office for a little bit of over 3 years. In the last 3 years, I've already passed 13 pieces of legislation, have taken the lead on the elected school committee, have worked hard to ensure that we have a reparations task force here in the city of Boston, as well as doing everything in our power to ensure that the participatory budget is fully funded, and really looking to support community. One of the things that I like to say on the council, that I'm like the little Chihuahua, I always have something to say, but here's what this moment requires is for us to show up in our full authentic selves, because community is depending on us to shepherd them through this entire process. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Julia. Next, we'll hear from Shawn Nelson.
Thank you for the committee inviting me into this space right now. My first time on this committee, so I thank you for inviting me. Being very nervous for my first time. Shawn Nelson, born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. Went to public schools, graduated from English High School in Jamaica Plain. Served the U.S. Marine Corps. I'm currently working as a certified nursing assistant in Boston. I'm running as a candidate right now because I feel our government's not really working for the people that elected them into office, ignoring them. And want to ensure the city that will me back from the military to make sure it's prosperous and growing, that everyone's voice is actually heard, regardless if I agree or disagree with you. Everyone should have a chance to speak up against the government and have their voices heard, regardless of what political side that you are on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Henry Santana.
Ziva, he needs to be made co-host.
There you go. Good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. My name is Henry Santana, and I am from Mission Hill, and I'm running for Boston City Councilor at large because I'm a product of this city. After moving to Boston from the Dominican Republic as a child, I grew up in BHA housing in Alice Taylor, went to Boston Public Schools, and grew up playing baseball across the city. I spent my years right at Mission Hill at a very early age, attending the Mission Hill Summer Program, where I served 15 years, 7 of those being as a camper, and then 8 of those being staff, where I was a junior counselor, a senior counselor, and also ultimately the director of the program for 2 summers. I went to LaSalle University and graduated with a history and political science minor. I have worked to elect Kenzie Bach. I was a field director on her campaign before joining her in her district office as her director of operations and Mission Hill and Fenway liaison. After that, I had the honor to join Mayor Wu in her administration as her director of civic organizing for the city of Boston. And right now, I am running for Boston City Councilor at large. Looking forward to communicating with all of you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. And lastly, we'll hear from Catherine Vitale.
Hi, my name is Catherine Vitale. I'm from Dorchester, born and raised, and now I'm raising my 2 kids here. Please excuse my nerves as I'm not the best at public speaking, and this entire process is a huge learning curve for me. I'm running for one of your 4 at-large seats because I'm honestly disgusted by the current administration and city council's blatant disregard for the Constitution and the will of the people. I was a Dunkin' Donuts manager for 14 years, and I've worked in the private sector since I was 16. My family has been directly affected by the opioid crisis, and I've lived in homeless shelters 3 times over the past 10 years with my kids. I'm currently unemployed and on welfare because I've chosen to homeschool my children, and I don't have much financial or family support. I want to represent the people of Boston because I have experienced firsthand the struggles of living here, and I want to use my management skills and personal experiences to get Boston back on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, and thanks to all the candidates for your opening statements. Next, we're going to hear questions on housing from Vanessa. So back to you, Vanessa.
Thank you. So we are going to have 4 questions on housing, and we are going to start with the rapid fire. This is when you're going to use your reaction buttons, and please respond simultaneously. So question number 1, yes or no? Do you support rent control? All right, now for question 2. Do you support requiring that the majority of new affordable housing units be built on site in order to ensure that communities are diverse and integrated? Yes or no? Thank you. Now, the next 2, you will have 1 minute each to respond to the following questions. What policies and strategies are you prioritizing or would you prioritize to address the affordable housing crisis and prevent displacement in Boston, especially within the realm of what the city?
Let me put my camera back. Okay, so I just want to chime in here because I can see on the screen that we're only seeing Henry Santana for this part, but I think somebody corrected that along the lines. So I think the questions were rent control. I said, no, I don't support rent control. And damn it, I don't remember what the other question was. Hold on. No,
Family has
too
been directly
far.
Now for question 2, do you support requiring that the majority of new affordable housing units be built on site in order to ensure that communities are diverse and integrated? Yes or no?
And I said no to that question because I honestly don't even understand what that means. Built on site, like what? Okay, back to the video.
Thank you. Now, the next 2, you will have 1 minute each to respond to the following questions. What policies and strategies are you prioritizing or would you prioritize to address the affordable housing crisis and prevent displacement in Boston, especially within the realm of what the city can control without state legislative action? What outcome do you expect from these actions? In concrete terms, i.e., how much additional housing? We will start with Ruth C.
Thank you, Vanessa, for this question. I am a big champion for the city's acquisition opportunity program, which is really a model and the best tool that we have in the city, hands down, to prevent displacement. It allows nonprofit developers, community land trusts to be able to compete on what is a competitive market to purchase buildings where tenants already live in them. So otherwise, these would be subject to some speculative market, and they would be bought by speculators, by investors who purely have a profit orientation. Our nonprofit developers care about our tenants, people before profit. And so putting more money into that has been something that I've championed. We did that with ARPA. And now through the budget process, I'm leading the amendment to earmark $2 million every year, specifically for community land trusts. to make it easier for them to be able to purchase properties. I think AOP is a single best tool that we have as a city to prevent displacement, and it requires us to just push more money in it and then to advocate for the state to develop a model statewide. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth C. Next, we will have Julia.
Okay. So as someone who has experienced housing instability growing up, and right now who is hosting my niece who is couch surfing, I understand the importance of really leaning into being as aggressive and as bold as this time requires for housing policies. And one of the things that I've been doing on the council is really creating opportunities for us to have people-centered planning and really looking at Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative and other and some of the work that we've seen coming out of downtown and Chinatown, really to help us understand how we hold the city accountable to ensuring that the people are deciding for themselves how they want to use the land. And one of the things that I have been fighting for is that what I see here in the city of Boston is that sometimes these developers, not only they don't live in the city of Boston nor the state, and sometimes they don't even live in the country. And I think as we continue to start thinking about land and how it's used, I think that we have an opportunity on the council to be a loud voice in helping to shepherd a process that is going to be rooted in community.
Thank you, Julia. Next, we will have Shawn.
Yes, thank you. Making sure that, again, people's voices are heard, bringing renters and property owners and landlords to the table, figuring out why we have so much of a high problem in the city when it comes to housing. Being a pedestrian, I walk through the streets of Boston all the time, seeing empty lots or abandoned houses, and making sure that the citizens have the opportunity to actually purchase, and again, making sure that we have landowners who are coming in and building houses for our residents, and making sure that finding out the reason why rent is so high in this city by communicating, bringing people to the table, making sure that it's affordable housing, people have access to that, and having the voice heard from the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have Henry.
Great, thank you. You know, as a product of someone who grew up in public housing, as I mentioned, grew up in Alice Taylor and Mission Hill, it has kept my family there for many years. You know, I really believe in prioritizing public housing over private development. With that said, I think, you know, it is crucial that we build great relationships, public and private partnerships, in order to really address the housing crisis that we have going on here in the city of Boston. You know, one thing that my campaign is really centered around is also tenant protection. We really must ensure that renters are not subject to unfair evictions, you know, due to discrimination, harassment, and that they really have the legal resources to address any such issues that may arise. And you know, I really support a rent stabilization because I know firsthand how hard it is to really find and keep housing here in the city of Boston. With current housing costs and inflation, it's really imperative to ensure that Boston residents are protected from unfair rent hikes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Catherine.
So I think the better question here is probably, why did we allow the city to make Boston unaffordable to Bostonians? My parents worked their whole lives. I don't ever remember a time that my parents didn't work, and they were never on assistance. I've been working since I was 16, and somehow I ended up on Section 8 now and homeless 3 times in the past 10 years. It doesn't make any sense. We are allowing gentrification of all of our neighborhoods. I don't know why. It needs to stop. I definitely have a lot to learn when it comes to what policies are in place for housing and affordable housing, but I don't think it's affordable for any Bostonian. And we have a lot of work to do to get there. I think I've actually spoken to a few small local developers who have told me that they're not able to build smaller developments. They've actually been stopped on projects because the city has told them that they need to be bigger. And bigger doesn't necessarily mean that it's affordable, because there's only a certain percentage, right? So I think that we need to hold the whole local government better accountable to what affordable means.
Thank you. Now we will have Cliff.
Thank you. I'd like to dive straight into this. Lived experience through my eyes and other eyes. It's very hard for families, and we don't talk about our elders enough when it comes around housing that are homeowners as well as renters. I'm very concerned on how parents could work their life, and then because they didn't insure their property correctly, lineage for the family is gone. And also the opportunity for renting, there's no opportunity for growth. When you get a lot of these programs that allow you to buy a home, you can't cap out if the region has prospered in more money for homes. So there's really no lineage for families when it comes to buying through the HUD's situations or any of those platforms. We really have to dive in. What is protection and rent control? Why is it not being effective in our community? I can speak across the board, all walks of life. Men have the hardest opportunities to get housing, even if they have great jobs. I have a friend that's a welder, and because he has a past record, I've been telling him for years how he could go through the lobby to get the right to be able to move into public housing. But he's renting hotels. It's not fair, even the hardworking men. What are we going to do with our at-risk men and women, the young people that are starting families? There's no diameter to help them gauge how to work in housing. So we really have to look at and really tackle it and dive with the right. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder that please keep your comments and conversations in the chat respectful. And now the next housing question we have is inclusionary development or IDP. IDP is where developers must set aside a specific percentage of income restricted units. And the Wu administration recently proposed changes to the IDP policy, lowering the threshold from 10 to 7 units, increasing the proportion of the project that is income restricted from 13% to 20% of the project. They also deepened affordability requirements, proposing that 17% of the project will be income restricted at an average of 60% of the area median income, which is about $89,040. In addition, 3% of the project will be reserved for people with housing vouchers at market rates. What do you think about this policy? Does it go far enough? And what would your proposal be? First, we will have Julia.
Yes, and I'm so glad that I get to go first because this is one of the things in 2019 that I talked about on the campaign trail. And I was being a little bit over aggressive and asking for 50% in terms of IDP. The fact that we're now 3 years into this conversation and we're still not even barely at 33, which is what the advocates are hoping to get to, I don't think that we are really meeting the moment when it comes to the housing crisis. And what also that I find to be a bit disturbing is that when we're thinking about where the units are being built, we're still giving people a pass to keep the seaport as fluent as it could be. And we need to really push development to ensure that we are bearing the cost of affordable housing across the entire city, which should not just be regulated to certain spaces. And so for me, when I think about what this moment calls for, I'd like to see the city go a little bit harder and a little bit bolder, while also taking into account that what we need to do is reevaluate what we consider AMI in terms of the income, the area median household is not reflective of what this city is all about. So we need to also lean into that. And I'm happy to see my colleagues on the council moving in that direction.
Thank you. Shawn?
Yes, I'll have to say my ignorance when it comes to this subject, when it comes to this particular subject and this question. Unfortunately, I'm not fully aware of this situation myself. So at this time, I'm going to pass on the question and allow another candidate to speak.
All right, thank you, Shawn. Henry?
Great, thank you. No, I agree with many with the thoughts that Councilor Mejia said. I think this is, a good start, but it does not go far enough. I think, when we're really talking about trying to create, longevity and keep our residents who grew up here in the city of Boston, and create, whether that's homeownership opportunities. I think, we really need to grow in that space. I think, the council has done a good job in going into this direction, but we really need to continue to do and have a community-based approach and a community-based process for this to really for us to really reach the goals that we want to be able to reach, right? And I think we really need to work with different developers to really reach this goal. So thank you.
Thank you. Clifton?
How you doing? Thank you. What can we say about this issue? Decades of being in the community, I haven't seen it really work for us. We're in 2023, and we're not even past the suggested amount that Julia Mihili, Councilor at Large, Julia Mihili mentioned at 33%. We got to stop robbing Paul and paying Peter. We have to get the families situated, because if you're not situated, how are you going to have longevity work? How are you going to be educated? We have children in our Boston public schools that are basically homeless. So we really have to dive deep. And I believe we have the right people in place, and I hope to be a part of that team to dive deep in those decisions, because I've been on that side of the track as an advocate and an activist. And I'm gonna have to do a little bit more research, but research is good. I will never drop a question, because we all have lived experiences and know what's affecting us firsthand. So the experience of knowing how Boston has changed and where we could reach is vital to all of us when it comes to living conditions and opportunities to buy housing and live in clean and safe neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth C.
Thank you for the question. I've always said that a 13% IDB policy is a displacement policy, because it's not enough affordable housing production on the market to really keep up with what's happening the speculative level for housing here in Boston. And so this is a good starting point. And when I was first running, I'm only 18 months in, when I was first running, I said 20% should be the floor. And then we should do additional research to see what bears out in that data. And there is good data that has been produced by organizations like Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance that shows that we can actually deepen the affordability, even when it comes to home ownership, down to 50% and still allow people to realize that goal. It is good to lower the average AMI requirement, but we still need to go a little bit deeper, because our AMI is a federal AMI that's based not just on Boston, but taking into account suburbs like Wellesley. And so it artificially inflates the AMI. So we still need to bring that down. I do really like the set aside for vouchers, because a lot of our voucher holders experience discrimination on the open market, which is why we've been fighting for more testers to fight housing discrimination. But having set asides in the IDP process, I think is a really brilliant idea. And I think that's really great. I think there's obviously still work to do. We are a city that has to develop and is so dependent on property taxes. And we need to make sure that we are building enough housing for our working class families, and IDP is one of those tools. So there's still more work to do, and this is a really great start.
Thank you. Next up will be Yawu with some questions around economic justice.
Thanks, Vanessa. We're going to start with one rapid fire question, and we're going to ask that you...
I'm sorry, I didn't get to answer the last question.
Apologies, Catherine.
So should I go?
Yes, please.
So the IDP policy, it's basically going to benefit the city's money and the big developers' pockets. It doesn't make any sense to continue to build these massive developments to bring more people into Boston, because we already can't house the people that are in Boston. I think that we're way past due to start putting our foot down and demand that our local government is working for the will of the people. We need to stop accepting the unacceptable. If we're going to have affordable housing, then it should be 100% of everything that's built should be affordable to the people that live in Boston. We need to stop bringing new people in. There's already too many people here, and we need to take care of the people that are here first, and the people who are from here, the people who have been displaced here, and stop bringing new people in.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, we're moving on to economic justice questions. And again, we have a rapid fire question, and then we're going to ask this time that people verbally say yes or no in addition to, is that correct? That we're asking that in addition to putting in the yes or no signs under reactions. And then we're going to move on to 2 1-minute questions. So start with the rapid fire question. The current living wage for city contracts is set at $16.38 an hour. Do you support increasing and expanding the living wage ordinance for city contracts, including indexing it to inflation? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And yes.
I'm not going to answer because I don't think I have enough information to give an answer.
Fair enough. Okay. Do we get everybody? All right. Moving on to the open-ended questions. The order is going to be Shawn, Henry, Catherine, Clifton, Ruth Z, and Julia. First question, budget priorities. This is the first time that the City Council has the authority to propose specific amendments to the city budget. What are your top budget priorities, or what would your priorities be if elected? And under what circumstances would you vote against the budget? So we'll start with Shawn.
Thank you. I would be focusing on making sure emergency services are taken care of. Those are the people who are keeping us safe. That means the police, fire, and EMS. These are the people that kept the city going during the pandemic. And without these people, our cities would actually crumble. Being someone who is in the medical field, I see this all the time. I want to make sure that education is also in the budget. We are also having people leaving the Boston school system because the education system is not working. We need to make sure that we're paying these teachers appropriate living wage that they can stay in the city. We need to make sure that our administrators are actually properly educated and held responsible. We need to make sure that we have security to protect our students. We need to make sure that the budget's going to things that actual people need, not just buzzwords and things that are not needed, wasteful spending. We need to make sure that the core of Boston is taken care of, making sure that we're supporting small businesses when they need it. We have too many businesses that are not thriving in the city. I walked through downtown Boston, even in the local cities, and seen too many business and closed signs. We need to take care of the core of Boston and take care of the needs of the actual people and the actual stuff that actually are required in this city. And if we don't have these things, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Shawn. Next, we'll hear from Henry.
Thank you. I think, I have quite a few budget priorities. One of them being housing, which we've spoken about, throughout this call. Again, product of public housing. I've been able to stay here in the city of Boston, and now renting as a young professional here. I think we need to find more opportunities for to keep young folks here and our families here in the city of Boston. I think, me being a product of so many city services and different programs, I really want to see a big push for our youth and for our students here in the city of Boston. So we need to invest in there's after school programs, summer programs, and that can be affordable to all our families here. And funds that can really go into the community. So I'm a big supporter of the participatory budgeting. I think, community should have a voice in where the funds are being used. And I think that is something that's very important, something that I've worked over the last year on. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Next, we'll hear from Catherine.
So I think I agree a lot with what the past two had to say. I definitely think that we need to have more resources and programs for kids, all around, kids of all ages. I know that I've struggled to find activities and programs for my kids to participate in because I homeschool my kids. So we're always having to leave Boston to participate in activities because I can never find anything affordable to do with my kids in Boston. So that's a big thing, is programs and things for kids to do. And also mass and casts, nothing that is being done is helping that situation. I think that we need to take a completely different approach to it, and we could be using tons of money for that. And I think that we've put more than enough money in housing. So I think we need to focus on actually getting people housed instead of just building new units.
Thank you, Catherine. Next, we'll hear from Clifton.
I mean, the list can go on, but that's why I decided to run myself for Boston City Council at large, because the issues in our community are too severe and too serious. I mean, I can go on the list, which most candidates here would be in agreement with me. You know, environment, parks, green space, public safety, elderly services, childcare, education, mental health. These are all issues that are very close to all of us. One of the key things that I did during the pandemic, when we were not just in Roxbury, we helped a lot of small business owners of the pipeline. That was my first job. My first job was at the Roxbury YMCA. So I would definitely be tackling around, and what would hold me back from holding something, if the constituents of my community do not get the service that are needed for them. So definitely my top P while campaigning is a part of green space, because it's very important with the emissions that are going under the ground is destroying our green space. Our parks. Our elders always complain to me about they love going to the park with their grandchildren, but there's no shade under that bench. You know, so we got to do a better job in designing, and we have to listen to the constituents of our community because they know best. So definitely education. What is the food intake coming in our community? Because there's a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Clifton. Next, we'll hear from Ruth Z.
Thanks, Yahoo. I think the mayor's budget does a lot to really invest in our families of all generations and in our young people. And so my amendments, and I would not vote for a budget that really wasn't about investment on the front end to make sure that all of our people were working towards wholeness and meeting their basic needs, like food on the table, quality education, access to affordable and quality housing, and jobs with dignity. So my amendments, I'll just talk about them. I talked about the AOP, investment for community land trust. That's a budget amendment that I have. Another one is fair housing testers to really combat housing discrimination that is rampant in our city, where we discriminate against folks who are LGBTQ+. We have discriminate against folks who are vouchers, mothers with children, Black and brown folks. And 3, I've championed more money in a budget amendment for vouchers for our students who are experiencing homelessness. There's a voucher program with BHA that we could be doing a lot more work with, so I've been championing that. Also a living wage study. It is too expensive to live in this city, and we require our municipal workers to live here. We have to be the example if we want our employers in the city to pay a living wage. So a living wage study, small business assistance, funding for new migrants, a pilot program for folks returning from incarceration. Okay, more amendments that I propose that we're voting on tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. And next we'll hear from Julia.
Yes, I'm really excited to talk about some of the investments that my office has been pushing. But before I do, I just want to uplift that there are a lot of nonprofit organizations and people who are not part of nonprofit organizations that are doing the work that the city should be doing. And I just want to uplift a few that I know out in these streets. Leon Rivera is a thought partner in so many different spaces and really trying to help support issues around family and community engagement with our Boston Public Schools, and has also been a leading voice out on the streets when it comes to mass and cast and everything that is happening. So I think that's some of the investments that I'd like to see the city in is more civic engagement. I have proposed an amendment that will provide grants for specifically youth grants to help them organize around the things that they need to do. And that was really inspired through some of the work that Leon is doing right now in the Boston Public Schools. And I think we should be funding that, as well as participatory budget. My amendments have been really aggressive in that space, because we can't say that we're for the people, but then not give the people an opportunity to decide for themselves how they want their dollars spent. There's also a workforce development for 19 to 24-year-olds and funding the reparation task force and mental health and wellness.
Thank you, Julia. All right, next question, next 1 minute question, wealth gap. All right, study after study has been published exposing the severe racial wealth gap in Boston. How and what can you do? How and what can you as a city councilor do to address this problem? First, we're going to hear from Henry.
Yep, thank you very much. You know, I think as a Black man, as a you know, an immigrant to the city of Boston here, you know, I know firsthand and have experienced firsthand, you know, the wealth gap that we have here in the city of Boston. I think I will first start with, you know, investments in job training programs. I think, you know, and really with a focus on our youth and our teens, just for them to also know, to be prepared to, you know, be able to take on good paying jobs, but also being aware of the jobs that we have accessible to them. So that really goes into just great jobs for our youth. You know, I think home ownership is a huge part of this, and I want to be able to create and advocate for more home ownership opportunities, especially for our communities of color and our most vulnerable residents here in the city of Boston. I want to make sure that, you know, families and people who grew up here really have the opportunity to stay here and retire here here in the city of Boston. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Next, we'll hear from Catherine.
So first, I just want to say that when you make every issue about race, you diminish the whole conversation. There's a wealth gap, period. I don't see why we need to always talk about what we're doing to benefit communities of color or Black and brown folks or, you know, any minority, because I mean, I'm a perfect example that your race doesn't determine your situation. I'm white and I'm probably poorer than everybody else in this conversation. So it's just really disgusting when we do that. But I think that we need to get to the root of the problem, which is what's happening at home with families. The government needs to stay out of our homes. They are constantly tearing apart families. We have fathers in prison. We have fathers or parents addicted to opiates. Those are the biggest problems. If we fix the families, then we start to fix the income situations.
Thank you, Catherine. Next, we'll hear from Clifton.
Wealth gap. Wow, what a conversation. Because I think educational wise, a lot of our people in the community don't understand. And one thing that I agree with the last candidate that spoke about, it's not about race because everyone's affected. I have friends in South Boston that said to me, I know what it is to finally feel Black, the discrimination that I'm facing, the housing crisis that I'm facing. So yes, it's a we thing, it's a people thing. We have to get some balance here because a lot of people don't understand without education what that $8 to the extreme amount that's in the other community. Doesn't matter if you're making $150,000 a year, you're part of that $8 gap because no one else in your family is making that wealth of money. So if you go down, your family's in crisis. We don't have great health insurance, great care. So all these factors come in. So what we have to do first and foremost is have an exclusive plan, no daggone studies, an exclusive plan with the brains that we have at City Hall now to dive deep into this situation and come up with alternatives that work for the people, not work for the business corporations and not work for people who do not care about the community as a whole. It's a sad situation that we're dealing with and we need to tackle it.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Julia.
Yes, so I'm really proud about the work that our office has done in closing the racial wealth gap. We passed our retail residential kitchens one of the first things that we did in office to ensure that individuals are able to generate income and eliminate that wealth gap that we've been talking about. People say that the household for a Black family is $8, but for Dominicans is $0. And I think as we start talking about these issues, yes, I agree that we have to talk about everyone, but we also need to recognize that Black and brown people have often gotten the short end of the stick. So my office has worked to expand literacy so that we can look at our returning citizens and having a whole literacy task force to look at how we're supporting our returning citizens and our adults who have interrupted education to make sure that they're able to apply for jobs and get those literacy skills. And aside from the IDP, 50% of the amendments that we have been fighting for on the budget is earmarked to close the wealth gap, which includes providing job career exploration programs for our young people so that they can have viable career options, and looking at our young people who are aging out of foster care and DYS. It's not just about jobs, but also providing them housing stipends and looking at the whole child in that space.
Thank you, Lucy. I'm sorry.
It's Julia, I couldn't get my name right. That was Julia.
I'm sorry, Julia. I skipped Ruth Z. We're going in alphabetical order, and I went from Clifton to Julia. So Ruth Z, please. I skipped your turn. Please answer now.
Thank you, Yawu. The racial wealth gap is a very real thing. Black people helped build this country and never got 40 acres and a mule. And you see that manifest itself in the practices in the 50s and 60s, where really redlining and blockbusting were institutionalized practices at the government level that prevented and stymied wealth building in Black communities. So we have a real problem that we need to address via the work of equity, which is about corrective action to make communities whole and to correct for policy harms and failures. And that includes affordable home ownership, where home ownership has been the foundation of wealth. So the city needs to be engaged in the purchase of land and also in working with nonprofit developers to make affordable home ownership more of a reality for our families. We need to get serious about working in lockstep with our unions to make living wages a reality for all of our families. And we can do it in a way that really addresses the deep, deep racial undertones in the practices of redlining and in the practices of blockbusting historically, but also recognizes that these are problems that affect all of our families, that affect working class families here in the city. So we know that affordable homeownership is the pathway forward to helping to close that racial wealth gap. The study, by the way, by the Federal Reserve, the $8 versus $247,500, there's a lot of inaccuracies in that. So I commend them for doing the study again, so we will get more accurate and better numbers. But the gap is real and requires our immediate attention.
Thank you, Lucy. And next we'll hear from Shawn.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I agree with the last few candidates. We need to stop bringing race into this equation, because as someone who has a walk of life, I've seen many people, white, Black, Latino, suffering, but also seeing those same people succeed. We need to make sure that we are training and giving our youth job skills that will allow them to actually go out into life and get these jobs and promote themselves. We need to stop teaching people that just because you exist, that you're owed something. You have to work hard for what you need. When I came back into Boston after the military, I worked 3 jobs. And that's because they all gave me benefits. And those 3 jobs, I was always offered a higher position because I worked hard for it. Not just, oh, well, I need money. We need to start teaching people to do the hard work, to go into entry-level jobs, learn these skills, get promoted, look at the positions in their companies, and rise to the occasion. Myself have done that myself. I've been promoted to a supervisor. We need to start teaching these people skills, not just because of the color of your skin, you're owed something. You have to work hard for this stuff. We can't just allow the government to keep coming in and teaching us that we're all victims. We can all rise to the occasion. I've seen many people of my same color in high positions. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we're going to have questions about democracy and the city's democratic processes from Vanessa.
Yes, our favorite topic, democracy. That's why we're here today. And so this one, we're going to start with 5 yes or no questions. And so please, along with using your reaction buttons, we'd like to hear your verbal yes or no's. And then we'll follow that with 2 open-ended questions. All right, first, yes or no. Do you support ending virtual meeting requirements for all City of Boston meetings as proposed by Council President Flynn?
No.
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 Yes.
Yes.
No.
I said no.
Thank you. Do you support allowing non-citizens with legal status the right
Yes.
to vote in municipal elections?
Yes.
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 No.
No.
Really,
Thank you.
three and no.
Would you support charter change to allow ranked choice voting in Boston?
Yes.
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 No.
Can you repeat the question? You zoomed out.
Yes. Would you support charter change to allow for ranked choice voting in Boston?
No.
Do you support a fully elected school committee?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Vanessa, there was
And so-
one more, the 16 and 17-year-old.
Oh, okay, sorry. Do you support allowing 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote in municipal elections?
Yes, and I created the home rule petition that's in the State House right now.
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes. If we can die for this country, we should be able to vote in this country. Yes.
Thank you. So now we're going to do the 1-minute open-ended questions. The first one being about community-led development. What is your philosophy for community engagement and co-governing with community? Specifically, which community organizations and civic associations have you worked with during your tenure, or would you work with if elected? And we'll start with Catherine.
You know,
So-
no time for me to talk about the candidate.
I would work with absolutely everybody. I don't see why there would be a question on who I would work with. If you're an elected official, you should have to work with everybody. Since the beginning of this year, I've gone to meetings with the Savin Hill Civic Association. I've gone to meetings in Codman Square, Roxbury. I've been trying to make it to as many community meetings as I can. It's really hard to keep up with how many different associations and nonprofits and groups there are. But I'm trying to make it to as much as I can, and I'm always open to working with every single person because I don't see a reason not to.
Thank you. Clifton.
Actually, for me, we don't have enough time. 3 decades of working in this community, collectively with different organizations or bridging the gap ourselves. I worked with such agencies when it deals to hip hop, UMMF, us making moves forever. We were a young band of young people that were artists, and we saw the problems going on in our community, and we stood up and we used art, sports, and culture to save the people of our age group. And a lot of them are working right now effectively in city government, as well as in the private sector fighting against. So the list is very long. I could talk about being a part of the NAACP when Michael Curry first made the decision, and we had that dissension in the ranks about the old guard against the young guard. But we stepped up as Black men to say, we need to be heard, and we're gonna stand up at the plate. I could talk about Mass Vote, work with them in the past. There's so many different agencies, but one thing I could say, I have a joy in the work that I do, and my commitment is real. And I'll never turn my back on my city because my city never turned its back on me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ruth C.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay, great. So it's incredibly important to make sure that community voice is centered in the development process. It's why it's important to have planning separate from development, so we can really plan a just city when we're bulldozing through the West End, bulldozing through Black and brown communities, urban renewal, which became Negro removal. So that is not a reality. And you really have to listen to everyone, civic associations, did a lot of work with the Massachusetts Affordable Homeownership Alliance before I was a city councilor, but really started my career as an attorney in housing court representing folks facing eviction and foreclosure. And that work was in partnership with City Life Vida Urbana. So working in partnership with community has been something that I'm used to, and listening. This work happens in relationship and in partnership with community because we don't have the answers as electeds. The answers come from community. So really working with everyone. One thing that you do have to be careful about is privileging civic associations that have a hard structure and that meet every month, every week over other voices, because working class families aren't able to make it all the time to civic association meetings. There are more homeowners than renters represented in certain civic association meetings, and we need to make sure that we're not replicating class privilege in how we plan for this city. And so really working with more grassroots-based organizations and alongside with civic associations, alongside with individuals and neighbors is really the way forward to make sure that we're really including everyone's voice, regardless of class, regardless of access, which is why it's also important to continue to have virtual options for Zoom to make government more accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia.
So I think that for those folks who have been following me know that I started working as a community organizer first, and it was because of being disregarded that I really took the opportunity to go on the inside. And the way that I move is an inside and outside strategy. You can't do the work without the people who are living the realities or living and working in that space. So a lot of my partnerships are Right to the City Votes, Mi Gente, JP Progressive. So for me, the advocates, and looking in the education space, I've been working in partnership with Beja, C-Plan, and others who have informed, and MAC, have informed every single policy that we have produced on the city council has been in deep partnership with the people, because my mantra is that nothing about us without us is for us. And every day people are making decisions that impact our lives. So the work that I've been doing on the council has been deeply rooted on making sure that not everybody just has a seat at the table, but that we're also setting the terms and conditions of how we're going to show up in those spaces. And I think as we continue to talk about civic engagement, I think those investments need to be real. And we need to go a little bit further in terms of who has the right to advocate, because in certain neighborhood associations, we see it's the loudest voices that usually get heard. And I think that now is the time for us to recognize that this city belongs to everyone, not just those who have the access, the privilege, and the opportunity, and the ability to show up to meetings. And I think that people need to get paid to show up too. And I think that one of the things that I see, especially in the education space, is that we're always paying contractors to decide for community when we should be investing in community to decide for themselves what we want to see in the changes in the Boston Public Schools.
Thank you. Shawn.
Thank you. We should be working with everyone in the community, regardless of how big or small that they are. They're the ones in the community. They're the ones who see everything on an everyday basis. They're the ones who see the solutions. They're the ones who are living the everyday life. As city government, we should be sitting down with everyone, regardless of the political side, regardless if we disagree or not. Because again, as citizens, we live in these neighborhoods. We see what's going on every day. We are the ones who are talking to our neighbors, our friends, and everyone in this community and their concerns. Working the mic while collecting signatures, I was talking to everyone in the community about every one of their issues, regardless if I agree with it or not. And I would have not known that, because I was open to everyone, even if I disagree with you. Because when I go into the office and represent these people, I have to represent everyone, not just myself, not just whoever elected me, not just a small group, but everyone. So we have to make sure we're listening to everyone and making sure everyone's in here. And as for the virtual meetings, we need to make sure it's hybrid for city officials to be in the offices facing the people, and the virtual reality should be for the people who are not able to come into City Hall or wherever these meetings are at. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Henry.
Thank you. I've had the fortune of working with civic associations, neighborhood groups, in every single neighborhood here in the city of Boston, especially here, my previous role as the director of civic organizing for the city of Boston. And we really did a lot of things. We planned community events, different community service opportunities. to really engage our residents and bring city services directly to the people's neighborhoods. I've seen firsthand the importance of these organizations to organize on critical issues in their neighborhood and to really build community. Growing up, I've seen how hard it can really be to navigate our civic institutions. And so it's a big priority of mine to continue working to empower residents to be active, participants in their neighborhoods. And that, that's why I created, when I was working in my role as Director of Civic Organizing, the Civic Power Pledge. We really encouraged, residents to become civically engaged. And I'll do my time. Thank you.
Okay, so we have, we're going to skip on over to the next category, schools, since we're running a little bit behind. But so yeah, we'll start with the yes or no questions.
Thank you, Vanessa. Question 1, do you support having uniformed police officers in schools, yes or no?
No.
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 Thank you. Next question, do you support having metal detectors in schools?
No.
No.
Yes.
Because of the times when I was young, I would have said no, but I'm saying yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yes.
Next question. This is a 1 minute open-ended question. What are the 3 things that you'd advocate for to improve Boston Public Schools? We're going to start with Julia.
Yes. So some of the things that I've already been working on, we established a mental health ambassadors program at the Burke. We believe in our office, and the way that we have been is really taking our directive from the young people. So I believe more investments in mental health and wellness, and that are peer-led and that are creating workforce development and career explorations for young people. I also believe that we need to invest in more parent leadership programs, not just parent university, but really seeing parents as partners and having them be a part of the solution when it comes to some of the work. And then I don't know what's, I'm hearing some background.
Somebody's has their mic on. Go on.
Yeah. And I think, having worked with, to have an elected school committee, this is an issue that is near and dear to me. I believe a lot of the problems that we're having right now is because we don't have accountability or real representation. And so one of the things that I'd like to see the city and the school committee folks start to recognize is that we have to start giving the power back to the people. So I think a lot of these issues that we are seeing in our schools are in direct result of the lack of representation that we have. And I also think that air quality.
Thanks, Julia, you're over time. Next, we'll hear from Shawn.
Thank you. 3 points I would making sure that we have an elected school committee, not someone who is appointed who will listen to one person. Making sure that we have qualified and educated teachers who make sure that the education process is fun for our students. If you're sitting in class, zoning out, you're not going to learn. We need to make sure we have classes that will teach us students to be prepared for life outside of the school. Making sure that we have security in the schools, because if you go to City Hall, court systems, they have their own security. You don't necessarily have a police officer, but you can have a security officer for the safety of our children. We need to make sure that they actually are having classes that are, once again, preparing them for life, and making sure that the parents, the community is all involved in these children's educations, because again, we are failing these students with programs that are not actually working and not preparing them for real life. We need to make sure that they have other solutions other than just going to college, making sure they have vocational classes. I was trained in high school on business, how to answer a phone. So when I went into the workforce, I was already prepared and had resumes, and making sure that we're able to get these students ready either for college or for real life.
Thank you, Shawn.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Henry.
Thank you. Yeah. So the investments I really want to see in BPS are mental health for our students. I think that's very critical and urgent right now and here for our youth. Really want to focus on the infrastructure improvements So, when it comes to green energy, to the air quality, really want to make major investments there. I want to continue to expand programs, to offer college level courses to high school students, really expanding the opportunities for Boston students to receive, different experiences in different vocational programs in trade schools. And really want to see a focus on our high schools, really to prepare our kids and our youth and our young adults for the next step of their lives. So really, and then the thirdly, I really want to create investments for community involvement in this process. Our families and our youth have been product of this, and I think they deserve to be part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Next, we'll hear from Catherine.
1 minute is absolutely not enough time for this topic. I pulled my kids. I pulled my kids out of Boston Public Schools because there's so many issues that need to be dealt with, and I'm a product of Boston Public Schools myself. The HVAC issues are a huge issue, but probably something that's going to take a really long time and money and planning to get sorted out, right? We have a lot of air quality issues in the schools. But then probably like the three things that I think that I would be able to work on would be, we need the elected school committee now. The phase-in plan is ridiculous. We need to be able to hold them accountable. I don't even think parents know who they are at this point. We made a mistake with the exam school admissions. We should be probably creating more exam schools rather than changing the admissions process. I think that was crazy. There's not enough time to speak on that issue though. And I think that we need more vocational schools, trade schools, and life skills classes, and less mental health.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, so hold on, let me just check my camera. I want to elaborate on that because 1 minute, like I said, is simply not enough time to talk about what's going on in schools. And I left off with like a really questionable statement to not include mental health. So I want to elaborate on that too. So I want to address Rob's question. He said, what are the new 3 R's? So the new 3 R's are rights, respect, and responsibility. So basically, rights would pertain to like civil rights, right? But not all civil rights, just like the civil rights of minorities and protected classes, right? Just pretty much where they can turn something that is like a free speech issue or a feelings issue into like hate speech or, basically the rights part is about protecting people's feelings. Okay. Respect is about respecting people's feelings. And not that I don't think that we should teach kids to respect people's feelings, but we don't send our kids to school to learn how to feel and how to think. School is supposed to be for academics. They're supposed to learn to read and write and do math and science, and I don't think they're learning any life skills, but they should be. So yeah, they should be taught to respect people, but to what extent? School is not a place where they need to be spending time teaching kids to be extra sensitive to everybody's feelings. This is something that parents are there for. I'm not even sure like how else to put it. I feel like this is common sense. Like a parent is the one that teaches kids, like how to deal with their emotional situations. This is not for school. Schools are not health clinics, and that's what they're turning into. And then the 3rd R is responsibility, which is basically anti-racism. So like any good marketing technique, anti-racism sounds like a good thing, right? Like you should be against hate. You should repel hate. You should not welcome for people to be hateful, right? But again, to what extent do we repel hate before it becomes an encroachment on the First Amendment. Everybody has the freedom of speech. It doesn't matter who you are. So how do you know that a racist is a racist if you're silencing them, right? How do you know who your enemy is if you can't hear them speak? That's what one of my friends said to me, and it stuck with me because it's the perfect example of understanding and respecting the First Amendment. You don't know who your enemy is if you can't hear him speak. So the First Amendment is the most important amendment, and that's why it's the First Amendment of the Constitution. Without free speech, we cannot have freedom. And if you agree with and allow your government to silence dissent and to silence people who disagree with them, it's very dangerous, because maybe today you disagree with me or you disagree with some hateful person and you think that I should be silenced, but tomorrow it could be you. Tomorrow it could be somebody who's standing up for something that you're passionate about and they're being silenced. So whether I agree with you or not, I will always respect and stand up for and advocate and fight for your First Amendment rights, whether I think that you make sense or not, whether I think that you are a good person or not. Everybody, every American, every person in America has that God-given right of free speech, and we should not let anybody ever violate that right. And we see it happening literally left and right. People are getting violated all over the place over free speech, and they're calling it hate speech. And it's just very dangerous waters that we're in right now with these free speech issues. So yeah, so the responsibility part is being anti-hate, anti-racist. Basically, they're teaching kids that it's not enough just to not be racist. You have to be anti-racist. So basically, when you see somebody else being racist, or when you know that somebody else is racist or hateful or prejudiced or whatever, you're supposed to call it out and put a stop to it. This is very fucking dangerous. And again, I don't even know, like, if that alone doesn't make sense, then maybe it needs to be a much bigger conversation. But anytime we allow them to suppress our free speech, we're making it a dangerous situation for everybody across the board, regardless of your political views, regardless of how you feel about what somebody's saying. We all have the right to free speech, and if we lose it, we will lose our freedom. So those are the 3 R's. And then I didn't get to touch on parental engagement in schools. I feel like at least public schools, or probably all schools, but public schools, I feel, are like the majority of the issue here. Parents, there's very, very low parental engagement, and it is my belief that that's how the establishment wants it, because they want to be able to indoctrinate and instill their own beliefs and views into our kids. So, we treat schools at this point as daycares and babysitters. We drop our kids off for 6 to 10 hours a day. A lot of parents probably have no idea what their kid is being taught or being told, or how they're being influenced in school. And they don't question it because they just have so much trust in the public school system. And they think that if there were a big problem, then they would probably hear about it. And that's not what's happening. Parents are being completely shut out at every single turn. With COVID, they don't even let parents into the schools. I think still parents are not allowed into schools because of COVID, which is ridiculous, because I'll be damned if my kid's going to go into a building that I'm not allowed in. So I don't even know how people are still sending their kids. But parental rights are completely being erased. And on the mental health issue, when you're bringing therapists and, like overly using guidance counselors and digging into the mental health of children in schools, you're opening the door for medical intervention, government intervention, child protective services, DCF. If you've never dealt with DCF, I'm glad for you, but a lot of people have, and I definitely have, more than once. And these people are trained to look at every single situation as a risk situation. They're trained to find ways that they can prove that a child is at risk by being in their home. So, when you have extensive therapy and mental health services in schools, you have a higher chance of something being reported because maybe something was misinterpreted, or maybe a kid has a misunderstanding of something that's happening at home, or maybe they over exaggerated something that's happening at home, or maybe just the person that heard them say what they needed to say took it the complete wrong way. And, now you have an open DCF case and they're potentially trying to take your kids away. It's a vicious cycle. And once again, schools, as far as I'm concerned, are not meant to be health clinics. They're meant to be schools for academics. So I think that that's all I wanted to elaborate on there, but I'm just going to check the comments to see if anybody had any other questions. I see a little bit of back and forth on Facebook, so I'm just going to look through. Yeah, right, Shannon. They call disagreement hate. Half the kids in school don't even have parents. I don't know what that means. Like, does that mean that, like, they're with their grandparents or they're in foster care? They still have some type of family at home, parents need to take the feelings and upbringings in the home. Schools to be taught reading, writing. Yep. Not every kid has parents. Go to Mass and Cass and hand out clothes, food, and toiletries because clearly they didn't have parents, right? I think that a lot of us have been to Mass and Cass and probably donated to Mass and Cass and have had family members on Mass and Cass. Yeah, so I think that that's probably all I wanted to say about the school issue. And remove social emotional learning, CSE, CRT, get back to a real curriculum, not indoctrination centers. Yeah, I agree. All right, so I'll start playing the video again. I just wanted to catch up on the comments and elaborate on that education thing.
Not enough time, but let me dive straight into elected school committee. We got to be careful what we ask for because I'm with an elected school committee, but I think it's something that the election department should handle, because when you're dealing with elections, the person with the most money's voice is going to be heard, just like running at large. The candidates with more money, their voice gets around. Let's talk about engagement with the parents. I can tell there's a lot of people that don't know the rich history of Boston Public Schools. Madison Park, Brighton High, Umana Tech, all those schools, Latin, were the richest schools when it came to knowledge. Now that we're looking at Worcester as having one of the best trade schools, actually they took the idea from Boston. We stopped giving real funding to our Boston Public Schools, so that's where we failed at. We have to look at the janitors, right? The janitors don't have a great contract at this point in time. And let's have some bonuses for our good teachers. so we can stop getting robbed of the charter schools taking our great teachers. And we need to have more Black men in the schools. We keep talking about diversity and planning, but I did real well by having a Black teacher in my school at Washington Urban when I finally made it to the Boston Public Schools. It was inspiring to see someone that looked like me, that kept me in check.
Thank you, Clifton. You're over time.
All right, but bottom line, just do something about it.
And lastly, we hear from Ruth Z.
Thank you. Three things that I would, three major things is one, buildings that affirm the dignity of our schools, two, of our students, two, more guidance counselors and social workers, and three, investments in early education. Important that our buildings match the dignity of our kids. That's one thing that charter schools beat us on. Physical buildings that really are beautiful and are engaging and drawing our families. Our buildings need to be 21st century climate resilient and be able to integrate a whole community, a nonprofits that work with our kids after and before school, all of that. Second, social workers and guidance counselors, because our kids need support, love, and guidance from adults that they can trust. So we need to continue to increase those numbers for all of our students. My guidance counselor was pivotal for me in high school. Three, early education, because we can see the disparities in our young people as early as 1 year old. And so investments in universal pre-K and in early education, even earlier than universal pre-K, the goal continues to move. And it's because if we are really to combat the racial wealth gap, investments in education as early as possible are essential to really closing educational gaps and to exposing our kids to the world. So those are, obviously, there's so much more you can talk about, the local school committee, there's so many other things you can talk about, but those are three investments that I think are really important on the front end to try to get things right for our BPS kids that were instrumental for me. My elementary school still is the same as it was 20 years ago, and that's not okay.
Thank you, Lucy. And next we're moving on to public health and safety with Vanessa.
So we're trying to move along with the questions. I think, did we want to put a poll?
Sure.
We're trying to figure out right now if we would shorten, if we were to shorten the amount of questions, which topics would you want us to keep? And also, we're thinking about, we hear people wanting fewer questions with more time, but then also people want to hear more questions and have 45 seconds. So let's just take this quick poll. What are people more inclined to? This is exciting. It's kind of split.
Can you put the poll back up for me, please? I can't tag into it. I don't see it.
Oh, I think because you're a co-host, Cliff, I'm afraid that you can't vote. But are you able to see it?
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry. That
Why?
makes sense. It should be the constituents that get that decision. So sorry.
It's okay. It's just a glitch of Zoom. You guys tell me when you want to close it.
Let's close the poll now.
Okay,
You'll
so
see it?
yeah, a bias toward more questions, you know, in less time.
Okay, so now we're going to be giving 45 seconds for those minute open-ended questions. Okay, so onto public safety and health. All right, so we have 3 yes or no questions. 1, do you support closing the loopholes in Boston's Trust Act, which would allow the Boston Police Department to inquire about immigration status or pass information along to ICE? Yes or no?
Yeah, I'm on mute. Yes.
I don't have enough information to answer that question.
I heard 3.
I said no.
Thank
I
you.
said yes.
Okay, question number 2. Do you support shuttering the Boston Police Gang database? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
That's a big yes.
Thank you. Last yes or no. Would you advocate for the reallocation of money from the Boston Police Department budget to reinvestment in communities? Yes or no?
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now on to the open-ended, and remember, you will have 45 seconds this time. But also, please be kind to the interpreters. Do you support community-based responses to nonviolent emergencies, especially in view of the recent reported deaths resulting from police intervention in emergencies with mentally ill people? What steps will you be taking to bring Boston closer to adopting this model?
Is it open?
Yes. So the first will be Henry.
Okay.
And you'll have 45 seconds this time.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would support this. And I'm sorry, I kind of cut off, so I couldn't hear the last end of the question. Can I
Sure.
get it?
So I'll repeat it again. Do you support community-based responses for nonviolent emergencies, especially in view of the recent reported deaths resulting from police intervention in emergencies with mentally ill people? And what steps will you be taking to bring Boston closer to adopting this model?
Okay, so thank you for repeating that. So yes, as I formerly said, yes, I would support this, and I would support our unarmed response to mental health crisis. I think we really need to invest and work on training mental health professionals with Boston EMS to really have an efficient emergency response. I think when community is really involved in these responses, and people that when people committing these acts, see people from the community really advocating, I think that creates a sense of trust, and it allows for people and residents in their own communities to really get to know each other. So absolutely, and this also really stems to also community healing and justice. So I'm all about it. So absolutely yes, thank you.
Thank you. Catherine.
So is this 2 questions or am I reading it wrong?
Well, yes. So it's do you support
Okay, I just
responses?
wanted to make sure.
Yeah. And then what steps would you be taking?
So I feel like I need a lot more information on community-based responses. If you've ever dealt with DCF, the Department of Children and Families, you don't want a mental health person coming to deal with a non-emergency situation in your home because they have way too many thoughts, and they always incline toward looking for bad situations in every home. Again, this is another topic that is going to take way more than a minute to talk about. So I would probably go with no for now until I have more information on what community-based responses are. And as far as the BPPA contracts, I would probably want to make sure that there was some kind of like disciplinary matrix where the discipline of police is consistent across the board always, where it's not like we've seen a lot of situations handled very strangely. I don't even really know how to explain it, but a lot of police officers that do outrageous things are not disciplined as much as they should be, and then police officers who do little things are disciplined more. It just, there's no rhyme or reason to it. So the disciplinary stuff needs to be more transparent and clear. That's it.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Catherine, but we accidentally dropped both the next two questions in the chat, but thank you for your responses. For this round, we're sticking to the community-based responses to nonviolent emergencies. Clifton.
Once again, it comes down to lived experiences. I've dealt with that situation, and it's a yes. We have so many different databases for so many different things that really don't concern this specific situation. And what I mean by that is we need a database where the officers know when they get a call that that person is mentally challenged at the moment. They should automatically know this. We can do this by using the hospitals to get the database, that we will have those divisions that go dealing directly with them will be the perfect model. That's what I would want to offer. The problem is a lot of people want to get in this dance, but we got to have the experience. Before I step my hat in here, I'm making sure that we have a better understanding. So I agree, and we have to have a database so we can never have the tragedies that have happened in my community firsthand. Crying mothers, brothers, sisters, grandparents, calling and feeling to this day that they set their child up by calling the police. We got to get a better handle on that, and it doesn't take rocket scientists to figure this out. We have the means and the power. Let's build a database that will make sure that this tragedy never happens in anyone's home again.
Thank you. Ruthie.
Yes, I support community-based solutions and interventions for those experiencing mental health crises and nonviolent emergencies. We do have the Boston Emergency Services Team, which is independent of BPD, that we need to continue to expand and really root in its independence to be able to respond to nonviolent emergencies. I think about Terrence Coleman, who in 2016 lost his life because a police officer intervened in what was a mental health crisis. So we need to make sure that we're doing that. This council, that the budget process is pushing forward on amendments that I support in continue to invest in mental health services. And the city continues to do that. So we definitely need community-based solutions and investing in mental health responses to mental health crises. And so I think that we're doing that as a city right now, and need to continue to move towards that model. Those among us who are shouldn't be Section 35, but should be, they shouldn't be forced into confinement, but should be able to get services from the city and get people from the city to respond who aren't responding with a gun, but who are responding with the appropriate training and support that you get with it when you're a mental health clinician responding to a call.
Thank you, Ruthie. Julia.
I'm really proud to say that in 2021, Councilor Edwards then and Councilor Wu and myself were the ones that sponsored the pilot program that then Mayor Janey approved. And so for the last 2 budget cycles, my office has been adamant around pushing for more investments to turn it from a pilot into something that is actually going to be fully funded. And right now during the budget cycle, my colleague Councilor Lara and myself have been advocating fiercely for this particular amendment to increase it to 2.6 million so that we can ensure that we have a community-centered approach to dealing with this that really centers the realities that so many of our residents who are experiencing mental health challenges to be able to be seen and treated with respect and dignity. And that is not a response with police first, which I think creates more of a tension for a lot of people. So I think that for us in our office, fully funding and really paying attention to what community advocates are fighting for in terms of real viable solutions is for me the way to go.
Thank you. And last, Shawn. Yes,
this is actually a kind of more of a discussion thing, being someone who's been in the military, who works in healthcare. This is not just a simple solution. We do definitely need to make sure that when 911 calls are being made to police, that the questions being asked, does this person have mental illness? Because when the police show up, they don't know this. This is not a comic book where there's a bubble over that person's head until you actually interact with them. We need to make sure these cops are actually trained to deal with situations without pulling their guns. We need to make sure that if it is a family member that is known to have mental illness and be violent, this is told to over the operator, so this can be relayed to the officer. So EMS can be on standby. So counselors can show up to the scene and help de-escalate the situation, because a lot of these times, like, situations can go from bad to worse within seconds, and these officers have to react. We just think this is some kind of planned life struggle. This is really an issue. I've walked into a room and had a patient change their personalities real quick and trying to infect violence on me. We need to make sure that these officers are trained in non-violent, not able to pull their guns. But at the same time, creating a database, if we encounter these people, make sure they go in the system about what the mental illness is, what the medication is, and how to treat them. And this is still a big conversation, because again, life is not a planned rule book.
Thank you. Hate groups have been and intimidation are on the rise in Massachusetts. And only last week, anti-LGBTQ plus graffiti was spray painted on the First Baptist Church in the heart of Jamaica Plain. But this is part of a much larger trend. According to a recent study, Massachusetts has recorded the country's second highest number of white supremacist propaganda incidences. This isn't limited to groups like the Patriots Front, but it also includes regular citizens. We know many of you have been targeted individually. What have you done and what will you do to protect the civil rights of all Bostonians and prevent intimidation and harassment, especially of the trans community? We'll start with Catherine.
I would just love to see the statistics and evidence on the hate crimes that have actually happened in Boston, especially when we're using the term white supremacy. I think that's an insane term to be using in Boston. Isn't Boston like one of the most diverse cities in the country? I don't understand how we could possibly have any effective white supremacy happening in the city. I've never seen it. I know that I've been called racist on way more than one occasion, and I'm not saying that it's real. I mean, there's always going to be racism. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I don't think that anybody should be targeted or discriminated against, but I mean, I think that once again, when we make race the topic of every issue, it's never going to go away.
Thank you. Clifton.
When it comes to the rights to the LGBTQIA plus community, they deserve the same rights of all Americans. There's injustice across America. Believe it or not, people, Boston's one of the most racist states that we deal with. A lot of it's hidden. The moms and pops know who the aggravators and the troublemakers are. We just got to step up to the plate, and we got to call it what it is. Racism is alive here in Boston, but we have to tackle it together. And any injustice to anyone is injustice to all. So we can sugarcoat it. We can dance around the question. We're all affected by racism on all aspects. And, you know, I'll end it right here. Let's stop sugarcoating it, and let's really prosecute the people who are making those drastic and evil tendencies in our community. We know who they are, but what we're going to do about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruthie.
Okay, so I'm going to chime in again quickly on this one. Because again, a minute is not enough time to tackle these questions. I think that the rest of the answers after this turned into like a does racism exist type of conversation, which that wasn't the question. The question was basically, what are you going to do to protect people's civil rights? I think she said. So first of all, I've spent the past almost 3 years of my life advocating for civil rights, advocating for kids to be unmasked in schools, and advocating for people to be able to keep their jobs and continue to go to school without getting a medical procedure done to their body. And again, when we talk about racism and hate, anti-LGBTQ, whatever you're going to be, we are encroaching on the First Amendment. You cannot know who your enemy is if you can't hear him speak. When you silence everybody because you disagree with their views, you're making it very dangerous. You are basically undermining the Constitution, the First Amendment. And like I said earlier, today it might be me who you think should be silenced because you might not agree with my views. Tomorrow it might be you or somebody else who's fighting for something that you are passionate about. When we allow the establishment, the government, whoever, to silence one, we are tacitly agreeing for them to silence us all. And if you don't understand how dangerous that is, you should probably look into history. The First Amendment is the most important amendment. I can't say it enough. Without free speech, we can't have freedom. It's just not possible. And we've seen it happen effectively over the past couple of years with these virtual meetings and hearings when they're muting and booting. With the virtual, even this virtual forum right here, it should be in person. All of these things, I mean, I don't oppose hybrid versions, which that was another yes or no question at the end of this, you'll see, but we didn't get to elaborate on it. If meetings and hearings and things like this are hybrid, because maybe people can't get to them and they're able to tune in virtually, that's fine. But it shouldn't be strictly virtual because they're able to silence us and violate our civil rights by doing these virtual things because they can mute us, they can kick us out, they can lock us out, and they can effectively silence us. A lot of the times in these virtual meetings and hearings also, for the most part, they don't let you have the chat feature. So think about it. If you were in person in a city council hearing or a city council meeting, and you're sitting in like the gallery of people observing the meeting or waiting to give a testimony, you're able to communicate with the other members of the public or members of the press or whoever else is sitting in the gallery with you. So if we're virtual, why can't we have the chat section? It's the same thing as talking to the person that's sitting next to you. It doesn't make any sense. The problem is that they don't want us to talk to each other. They don't want people who disagree to find common ground because then it's a threat to them. It's a threat to their money. It's a threat to their job security. It's a threat to their agenda. They don't want us to stop fighting about racial issues and LGBTQ issues. They want us to hate each other because as long as we're hating each other and fighting each other on these issues that shouldn't even be issues, we are distracted from what they're doing. We're not paying attention to how they're gentrifying our neighborhoods. We're not paying attention to how they are successfully dividing and conquering everything around us. And it's a slippery slope and it's dangerous. So yeah, this conversation got into this whole racism thing. And the point that I was trying to make with I want to see evidence is that if I don't know if anybody's on here that watched my video a couple months ago where I watched a Boston Human Rights Commission meeting where they were talking about the rise in hate crimes in Boston, and they named like 3 incidences that weren't even legitimate. And one of them was actually, not that they weren't legitimate, but there's a lot of factors that, can be talked about in a different conversation as to why I'm saying that they weren't legitimate. But one of the hate crimes that they brought up was the Boston Marathon. if hate crimes are on the rise and there's so many of them happening, then why are we talking about something that happened? I don't even know how many years ago. I would think that you would be able to talk about more recent issues if there's so many of these things happening. And I just think that these things are not really happening, that they're just creating these stories to perpetuate the divide among the people. And whatever happened to sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Kill them with kindness. Why are we so content with letting ourselves be victimized? And, you know, we should be teaching our kids that, you know, you're capable of doing anything. Anything's possible, right? You can be whoever, be whatever you want to be, as long as you work hard and strive for greatness, right? But instead, we're teaching them to be victims. We are allowing ourselves to become victims. We are allowing people's First Amendment rights to be violated because we disagree with them. If somebody is racist and they're not actually committing crimes, you know, because of their racism, then why are we giving it a platform? I think that when we call attention to hate, that's what we're doing. We're giving it a platform. If somebody's hateful, ignore them, right? Or again, kill them with kindness. Or I don't know, do whatever it is, you know, that you feel like doing. But when you're making it the topic of every conversation and you're victimizing yourself, you're just perpetuating the problem and you're making it a bigger problem that it doesn't need to be made into. So that's that.
Thank you for this question. I just want to extend just the compassion for us, all of the communities, the LGBTQ plus community that has time and time again in our city experienced hate crime, whether it's the Pride in Hyde Park, First Baptist Church in JP, drag reading at our libraries. It's very real. It's actually very triggering for a lot of folks when that very real presence and really very real events are denied by others. So just want to, it happens, and it happens every day. We live in a society where at its root, we are still trying to rat out white supremacy. And so one of the things that I think we need to be doing is a Human Rights Commission to build that up as a reporting body in the city. Not everyone, when they experience an instance of discrimination or a hate crime, wants to report it or feels comfortable reporting it to the police. Having alternatives that we are building up in the city to report is incredibly important. We also need to make sure that we are investing in safe spaces for communities that have been otherized and historically excluded, which is why I'm so proud and happy to be supporting the city's efforts to help the Trans Emergency Fund buy their own permanent house for trans folks who are experiencing homelessness. And you know, last November, I have my office as the chair of Civil Rights and Immigrant Advancement held a forum in conjunction with the United States Attorney's Office to really hear from community about how we can better address when Black people are under attack. You know, as what happened July 2nd of last year, they were attacked by white supremacist groups here. How do we respond? How do we want, or how do we don't want BPD responding? I'm sure folks don't know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia.
Yeah, so, you know, I get really sensitive when we're talking about issues like this, because there's this sense that that no one's experiencing racism. And I have been unapologetic, and I'm glad this is being recorded because y'all can do the rewind, because I have been unapologetic about the issues that are impacting Black and brown communities. And the fact is that we are under attack. You know, from the way we show up, the LGBTQ community, like every single you know, the Jewish community, every single community that you can think of, especially since the Trump era, has come under attack. And this whole idea that it does not exist, it minimizes the realities that so many people are facing. And so for me, I believe that when we see it, we have to call it in. But it's not just about calling people out. What we need to start doing is calling people in and having real discussions. Boston is one of the most racist city in the country. And every day, I remember coming here in the 70s and being told to go back to where I came from. And now even as a whole entire city councilor, I go into certain neighborhoods and I still hear things like, speak English, you're in America. White supremacy still exists. And we see it in our Boston Police Department. We see it in our Boston public schools. We see it everywhere. And now the question is, what are we going to do about it?
So the point that I was trying to get to in my last ramble was, unless an actual crime is being committed, why are we giving hate a platform? If somebody's committing a crime, then yes, it should be treated like a crime. But when patriot feds walk through Boston with American flags and literally do nothing, why is that scary? Why is that intimidating? Why are we giving it a platform? Why are we talking about it in the news? There's shootings that are happening every day, and you're talking about a bunch of white guys walking through Boston in uniform, holding American flags with masks covering their faces because they can't show their identities for obvious, I think, what should be obvious reasons. It's just like the shit isn't happening. Like there was supposedly an attack on a black male that day. And then we hear that he walked away with a minor laceration to his wrist or something. And the picture was just like insane. It's like you have to wonder if these are actors. I mean, it's crazy. And so, like, okay, Julia says that she came here and people told her to go back to her country. People still tell her, speak English, you're in America. All these things. Like, we all, at some point or even throughout our entire lives, deal with some kind of rude, hateful, prejudice type of behavior from the people around us. That's never going to go away. No matter how much we talk about it, no matter how many rallies we have, no matter how, many videos we make or how many classes we teach on how to be anti-racist, people are always going to be hateful and prejudiced. And the best thing to do about it is to ignore it and not give it a platform. I mean, is our, Julia or Rootsy's or anybody's experiences different than mine because of our skin colors? When I was a teenager, I was mugged twice on Dorchester Ave. I think twice, like in the same year. I think when I was 16, both times, it was groups of black men. The first time, I think there were like 4 black men pushed me up against the store wall at the top of Center Street in Dorchester Ave and robbed me for my purse and my cell phone. And then I think like a couple months later, it was down at the intersection of Dorchester Ave, Freeport Street, and Hancock Street. I was walking by myself and it was raining. And again, I think it could have been another group of 4 men. Maybe it was the same men, who knows? But it was like 3 or 4 men. And again, they grabbed me and took my shit. I mean, I'm lucky they didn't do anything else to me, but I didn't ever take those experiences and, cry victim because of it. Like, yes, I actually was a victim, but I didn't let those experiences define my life or how I feel about Black people or people of color, minorities, whatever. Like, if we just don't give it a platform and if we don't let it affect us, then we're good, right? Like that's what myself and people that I know have done our whole lives. And then she said, what else did she say? That I don't know, but she's complaining a lot and she's sitting in a city council seat. She's been elected twice already and working on her third election. How can you be making the type of money that she's making, having the public influence that she's having on people, you know, holding an elected position for 2 terms so far, possibly 3, and still cry victim and oppression? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I, you know, am not in a good situation financially, you know, with my family or myself right now. And I'm not, you know, out here blaming other people or blaming, you know, hateful people for my situation. I mean, it just seems so ridiculous to me. Like, we're never going to be able to alter the way that people think and feel. So why are we putting so much energy and time into having these conversations? Like, raise your kids and teach them to be better. That's pretty much all that you can do, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments, because I just, like, you know, she's so seemingly triggered by what I said when she gives this response. And it's just like, you know, me having my response. I mean, I've had conversations with Julia in person. Does she think that I'm racist? I don't know. I mean, I've given her a hug. We've hugged before. So does a racist white person hug a person of color? I don't think so. But that, I don't know. It's just like, it's very confusing to me why people act this way, and why people with, I mean, like, I agree with Julia on a lot of things. So I just don't understand why she lets these conversations overpower everything else, and basically, like, gets tricked by the establishment's tactics of keeping us divided, if that makes sense. I don't know. Let me know in the comments.
Thank you. Shawn.
Oh yeah, thank you. So as a Black man, also a part of the gay community, I believe we hyperinflate these so-called racism moments because someone gets criticized. We see it with the explosion of the internet and social media. A lot of groups are being exposed, unfortunately, for their bad behavior. And when they get criticized, somehow it's labeled as racism. We all know racism is a human factor. It will never go away. The only way it's going to go away is by educating and making sure that people know that behavior will not be accepted. But we also need to realize people will see bad behavior and criticize it. I also have, being as a gay man, seen how the gay community is being pulled apart with the whole sexualizing of kids. So people will get upset with the LGBTQ community that's pushing that. As a gay man, I don't agree with that. So most people will call me a homophobe, not even realize I'm actually gay. The problem is, criticism is not racism. We keep talking about the KKK, and I doubt for any of the people on this panel has actually even seen a member of the KKK. The problem is, again, hyperinflation with this specific topic. Everyone has different preferences. Everyone has their judgments of other people. It's how you act on that. And if we keep bringing and making an excuse that every time I get criticized, oh, you're harassing me, or it's racism. No, we need to stop with that language. Thank you.
Excuse me.
And then last we have Henry.
Thank you. No, I want to reiterate, you know, the racism is very real, and it's very real here in our city of Boston. You know, in response to the question, I think I definitely want to ensure that hate crimes, you know, and as a candidate right now, but as a city councilor, I want to make sure that the hate crimes are really responded to quickly. And
again, I'm sorry, I just can't fathom these people in these positions playing victim or claiming to be oppressed. Look at your lifestyle. Look at the money that you're making. Like, you are a successful person of color. What are you talking about? Your life is what you make it, regardless of how people feel about you, whether or not people like you. It doesn't matter. If there's a crime, treat it like any other crime. If not, free speech, bitch, to quote Joe DePina. I mean, it's free speech. Like, leave it alone. It's so ridiculous. You, like, doesn't make any sense. Stop it. And I don't think that anybody even said racism wasn't real. So I don't know why they keep saying that.
And with, you know, very seriousness to the issue. I think, you know, my campaign and you know, and if elected, I will definitely be showing loud and proud support for our LGBTQ plus community, and, you know, really invest and think about creative ways of investing in more safe places for all of us. So, and then I think the last piece that I really want to touch on, I think, is that we want to make sure that, you know, to create space for everyone to be at the table and for our voices to be really heard. So, you know, those are the steps that I will take if elected. Thank you.
All right. Next,
Thank you, Yawu.
yep, we have 4 questions dealing with environment, public good, and public health. And these are yes or no questions. And so we'll start. First of all, do you support expanding the fare-free bus program in Boston? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, I actually worked on expanding that.
No.
Yes, but make it fair for other communities as well. Expand it.
Okay, yes or no, yes or no. And next, do you support the mayor's plan to increase bus lanes across Boston?
Yes.
Absolutely not.
No.
Okay. Everybody answered?
I'd say that's a trigger question. I think we have to do a little bit more research, but what I would propose is during traffic times and high visible traffic times that we open up the lanes, that it's just not for the buses.
Mr. Braithwaite, it's a yes or no question. I'm sorry, I got to cut you off. Third question, do you support the mayor's proposal to expand bike lanes across Boston?
Yeah, you could.
No.
Wasn't that the last question?
No, it was bus lanes. Bus lanes was the last question.
Oh, okay. No to bike lanes either.
Okay.
There's rice and beans and arroz con guandule, so you could.
Last question. Do you support vaccine mandates during public health emergencies?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely not. Human rights violation.
No.
In this thing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Going back to Vanessa with one last question before we go into the closing statements.
So this forum is hosted by JP Progressives. And I just think it's funny how they also have a survey, like a more extensive survey that's due at a later date. And I went through all the questions on this survey before the forum, and it seemed that pretty much all of the questions in the forum were asked in the survey. And I just think it's funny how they threw in that vaccine mandate question, and that's not on the survey. I feel like maybe they did that because certain people are here answering questions and they wanted to make a point. I don't think that it was actually part of their questions. I could be wrong. I don't mind being wrong, but I just think it's funny. And I think it's pretty fucking ridiculous that me and Shawn are the only 2 people that don't support vaccine mandates. It's a human rights violation. It's disgusting that somebody could be working a career that they worked at for decades and then all of a sudden they're no good because they don't want to undergo a medical procedure. And I think it's pretty hypocritical that I'm sure all or the majority of these people scream my body, my choice when it comes to abortion, but it's not my body, my choice when it comes to other medical procedures. And then there was somebody in the comments. There was actually a lot going on in the chat section in this forum. I elaborated a little bit more on some of my answers in the chat too. And, you know, pointed out the fact that most of these answers needed a bigger conversation to take place. Especially I know for my answers, because I don't think that a lot of these issues, or any issue for that matter, can be effectively answered in a minute or less. So somebody in the comments had said something about being vaccinated, and I was like, okay, you know, like, good for you, but I don't think that you should have to disclose your medical information to keep your job or to stay in school. You know, like, you have a right to privacy. We all have a constitutional right to privacy in many different forms. So we should not have to disclose our medical information in order to keep our job or continue to attend school or get a job or get into school. And I just don't, like, how long are we going to perpetuate this bullshit? I don't know. It's about to be over. The last question was stupid, but they also let everybody have like a closing statement. So
Yes, I get to ask a fun question. What is your walk up to home plate song? And we will start with Shawn.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. My home plate song.
So you could say like when you're up at bat and you walk up to home plate, or like we could say your theme song. What's your walk on song?
Unfortunately, I don't do celebrations like that. If I accomplish something, it's pretty much a woohoo or a handshake or a hug or just basically something. Congratulations. I don't go into these whole song and dance and stuff. Sorry, I keep things very simple and to the point.
All right, thank you. Next is Henry.
I would specific song I couldn't think of it, but I would definitely probably have to go with Bad Bunny as the artist. So I will, any Bad Bunny song would do.
Fun. Catherine.
I wish I knew that this was going to be a question, because I would have had a great answer, but I've made jokes about how my campaign song is going to be Player by Coi Leray. So.
All right. Clifton.
You know, I'm old school hip hop. And mama said, knock you out.
All right. Ruthie.
I'm new school hip hop. So I have a tie. Young Jeezy, Put On For My City. That's like my jam. And Flex by Rich Homie Quan.
Great. And Julia.
My daughter is up in here telling me what to say, but I'm gonna go with Ghetto Superstar. That was my original when I first ran in 2019, Ghetto Superstar, and I claim it. And then the other one is You Can Hate Me Now by Nas.
Thank you. Thank you for entertaining us with that. And Yawu, take us to the close.
All right. Thank you all for answering the questions and for your participation in this forum. We're ready for your closing statements. Are we doing 1 minute for closing statements or 45 seconds?
45, because we're already a half an hour overtime.
45 seconds for your closing statements. We'll start with Henry.
Great. No, thank you, JP Progressives, all the co-sponsors, members of the public, our interpreters. Really appreciate you all being here today. Again, I'm Henry Santana, and I'm running for Boston City Councilor at large. Having worked in the city council and having worked in administration, I think we collectively need to do more, and we need people in the city council who are going to be representative of our communities. I grew up here in the city of Boston, grew up in Mission Hill, product of public housing. Grew up with English and Spanish. Having to learn both of them at the same time. I understand the different complexities and the different civic institutions that people need to be able to navigate here in the city of Boston in order to really stay here in the city of Boston. And I want to be able to be a true advocate for my community. And on November 7th, I humbly ask for one of your 4 votes to be your next Boston City Councilor at large.
Thank you, Henry. And next we'll hear from Catherine.
So again, I just want to say that I'm born and raised in Dorchester, single, struggling mom of 2, homeschooling parent. And I want to create a better future for my kids, and I want my kids to be able to afford to live here. And I want to be able to afford to live here without being on Section 8. And I just also want to say that I think that it was really disappointing that so many of the candidates said that they would support vaccine mandates. That's a huge human rights issue. And I have very close friends that were actually fired from their jobs because they wouldn't take the vaccine. And I can't fathom why anybody would support something like that. So that's all.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Clifton.
I don't want to eat up too much of my time, so I'm just going to say thank you to everybody. I would create a more exclusive Boston. I would set a trend for people of color and men and women and the LBG plus QT community. I would set them up all for success. We can accomplish this here in Boston because we are the beacon of the United States. And with your help, asking for one of your 4 votes to be your next city councilor at large, things I would tackle: environmental, parks, green spaces, public space, education, childcare, rent control, small businesses. But I'm a reflection of Boston's success. I moved from a community. I'm the first American born out of my family. I'm the proud son of Jerry Braithwaite and Gloria Braithwaite. And with me being at the helm, I will not let you down because Boston has never let me down. Thank you.
Thank you, Clifton. And next we'll hear from Ruth Z.
Thank you. It has been an absolute, in these 18 months, it has been an absolute joy and privilege and responsibility to represent everyone on the Boston City Council. I continue to learn every day from all of you and to believe that this is a work of partnership. This is a call to service. That is a calling that is about looking out for each other. I believe we are each other's responsibility, big and small things, that we believe in each other's potential from our youngest ones to our oldest, and that all the work that we do is about building a more fun, a more equitable, a more just Boston where we are resilient and we are meeting the pressing issues of climate justice and affordable justice. I work really hard because that's all I know, and I want to continue to work really hard for each one of you. So I hope to obtain your endorsement again to those who are endorsing, and I do hope to humbly get one of your 4 votes for at-large city councilor in November. Thank you for all of the incredible advocacy that everyone on this call does. I really appreciate that you take the time to listen and work in partnership with me as we build the Boston that we deserve and that all future generations deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruthie. Thank you for sticking the time. Julia.
So I'm so incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to be with you all this evening. I absolutely love my job. I can't believe that I've only been in office for the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, I've learned so much about politics and people and what works and doesn't work here in the city of Boston. And I feel like I'm just getting started. I have a growth mindset. Is some of the things that I always like to talk about is that when you know better, the expectation is that you'll do better. And I feel like for me, the work that I've been doing on this council is deeply rooted in community and recognizing that what we need to do is continue to set the stage and to create opportunities for those folks to really be on set and to not only just live the realities, but to amplify that work. And so for me, as a single mom, as the first person in my family to graduate high school, buy a house, and now I got a niece and her 2-year-old son living with me, I know that for me, it's not just politics and pedigree. I work really hard, 12 to 13 hours a day, and I do so because I love this city. So I wish you would give me one of your 4 votes.
Thank you, Julia. And lastly, Shawn.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me in this forum and giving me a chance to hear my views up to the community. I want to represent Boston, being born and raised. I want to make sure that Boston thrives to the future, that this city does not become places like New York, Seattle, and California with bad policies. I want to make sure this city stays beautiful, diverse, and strong. We want to make sure that everyone's voice is being heard, regardless of what is your political and your personal backgrounds. We need to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, and we have common sense policies to address issues throughout Boston. Thank you. I hope you will vote for me as Shawn Nelson at large.
Thank you, Shawn. Thanks to all the candidates who participated. Thanks for your participation. Thanks for your candor. Thanks to everyone who's zoomed in to this meeting.
So that's it. Thank you so much to the 4 to 6 people who stayed up this late to watch that whole thing. If you did watch the whole thing, or if it's new people, thank you for tuning in. Yeah, so I feel like stuff like that doesn't really get seen by the majority of people. So please share the video, repost it. It's on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. and hopefully we'll be involved in more forums as the campaign season goes on. And I mean, I just think it's funny at the end that Julia names all of these accomplishments that she has, but yet for some reason she still thinks that she is more oppressed than anybody else. But yeah, so I don't know. That was mine and Shawn's first candidate forum. I know that I was very nervous. I'm not sure about Shawn, but I think that we did a pretty decent job for it being our first time. And I hope we have more, and I will post more, and I will hopefully be back tomorrow to get back to the Common Ground show. And now I'm going to go to bed because I have to be up early. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comments if you think that there were other points that I missed the opportunity to make, or, you know, if you have any feedback at all, please let me know, because I am not a great public speaker and I get really nervous and I forget a lot of points that need to be made. So feedback is much appreciated. And I will hopefully see you guys live tomorrow. Thank you for watching.